professional to introduce themselves. And okay.
Hey everyone, this is Abhinav here. I am it's currently 10 p.m. here, so I'm calling in from Copenhagen in Denmark. I have worked in India for the longest time. I very recently moved in December. Currently, I run something called 10K Designers, which is this right here. Started as a YouTube channel making UI UX design videos. Now it's a Discord community with about 3,000 people. And we also run a 3-month cohort based program to learn UI UX design and get into startups mostly. Besides that, I've co-founded my own music app. This was a while back. Uh, Thinking now about COVID, it would have been cool to do it, but it was a music chat app. It was quite fun. Written a book about freelancing. It's called Pajama Profit. Before that, I was at Unacademy, which is a company in India, and that's an edtech company as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Abhinav. Next up is Alex.
Hi everyone, so my name is Alex and I am a multidisciplinary experience designer. Also, I do freelance illustration. I am currently finishing up in the Masters of Information program at the University of Toronto, where I'm specializing in user experience design. And I just completed doing an 8-month co-op that started in last summer and that just ended up this week actually. Other than school stuff, I am also leading, well, it's kind of related to school. I'm also leading a graduate reading group with the McLuhan Center of Culture and Technology, and we're exploring how user experience design and technology can help to dismantle systemic racism. Before I was at U of T, I studied at OCAD in environmental design, and I also studied at U of T, I studied semiotic anthropology. So I've been in school for a while. And just a quick note, I have 3 cats. If you hear one of them in the background, I'm sorry.
Amazing. Thank you, Alex, for sharing. Okay, sorry guys. Excuse my oh god. I am so sorry. There.
Yeah, I'm also at home as well. So if there's a background noise, please let me know so I could, go to a different room. My name is Sung. I'm currently a product designer at Amazon. I also have a couple of startups on the side that I run. One of them is called Coffee Pass. That's my current passion right now. And I've been in the startup industry for almost 8 years now, so off and on. And then when I first got into it, I had no idea what I was doing, but I was just a UI designer. So since then, I just developed myself and expanded my skill sets to become a product designer with multiple disciplines. So if you have any questions about startups, UX, UI, strategy, product management, feel free to reach out to me. And I'm also a TikTok influencer. So if you want to follow me, that'd be appreciated.
Amazing. Okay, so I'm just gonna stop sharing my screen so we can all, see each other better. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining. I'll be a co-host today with my co-host Serena. My name's Aline, and yeah, so now we're just gonna pass on the floor to you guys to ask questions to our industry professionals. So we'll basically have from, I guess, like 4:15 right now up until 5:15, 5:20 for this like group panel session where everyone's in the same room and we get to ask questions. Once we hit like 5:20, we'll go out into the 3 different breakout rooms where you'll get like a more close-knit opportunity to kind of like network with our speakers. So yeah, everyone feel free to just ask away with your questions.
You can go right ahead and unmute or message the chat. Feel free, raise up your hand, anything you want. We're ready.
Hi, could I ask the first question?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Yeah, so I just was curious about what kind of first experiences you had like in the professional, whether it be like an internship experience you had, and maybe some tips of how you kind of went through that process.
Anybody want to tackle it? If not, I can go first. Okay, so my very first actual job experience was the internship in New York. When I was in school, I was actually studying advertising design, not UX, UI, or product design. But when I went to the internship program, so at that agency, there is a internship coordinator who was supposed to coordinate everyone, put interns on projects and manage the traffic. But she sort of got busy and forgot about us, literally. So 30 of us in the office were just sitting in the cube doing nothing, watching YouTube every day. So I was like, this is not it. This is not what I was looking for. So I decided to just take it up on myself, and I decided to just walk around the office every day, poke my head into all the creative director's office, introduce myself, and ask for feedback on my portfolio, or ask if they need any help on any projects. And at first, it felt like a huge waste of time, but eventually, a couple of the directors and the art directors reached out to me for help, and then it got me a chance to work on some of the cool projects. So that kind of experience repeated throughout my career path. It's like I'll be brought on to a project for a very minimal role, but then I just made myself available, talked to everyone, and just worked. I was the first one on the job, last one to leave. And as a beginner, what I have as a strength and asset is time, because I wasn't as experienced, but I had more time than anybody else. Also, I was willing to put more time into the project to basically beat out the competitions. That was my strategy in the beginning.
I can go next on this question. So as I mentioned, I just finished up my 8-month co-op today, actually. And so that was my first introduction into the user experience design field from a professional standpoint. I was coming into it from with not a lot of experience in professional design roles. I'd previously studied spatial design at OCAD University. And so the jobs that I'd had there were much more along the fabrication side of things, like welding or wood fabrication. And so when I was applying for internships through the co-op program, I just made sure to include all of that breadth of work inside of my portfolios as well. And I think that was actually what really helped to stand out in the application process. So I had, of course, some UX case studies, but I also had a spatial experience design project that I designed and put on for Nuit Blanche. I also had a furniture piece that I'd built, and putting those things in there and not being afraid to kind of show how I'm a multifaceted designer was something that helped me stand out. Another great thing about the internship that I did was that it was a very small company. We have 15 people who work there, and I was the first UX designer that came into the company. So that was a really great opportunity. Don't be afraid to take roles where maybe you're the first UX designer or the only UX designer on the team, because you're going to get great opportunities to really have product ownership in everything that you're working on. Over the 8 months, I've been very involved in the production and shipping of 8 different projects, which is something that's a great experience to get as the first job.
So for me, typically the way I answer this is that it's very tricky early on, because to get an interview with a company, you need to have a portfolio. But then to have a portfolio, you need to have projects. And then to get projects, it's where do you get them from? So it's sort of like a chicken and egg problem. So for me, the way I initially tackled this was I started freelancing when I was in college. So I did a bunch of freelance projects, and not necessarily UI UX design. So some of my very first projects were like $20 logos on Fiverr and Upwork and a bunch of these sites, where I was literally just making logos for a popcorn company or something new someone was starting. And of course, I couldn't really use these for my portfolio, but it gave me that experience of working with clients in some way. I'm just going to quickly drop a video link as well, if anyone wants to go deeper. But typically so once I had that freelance experience, I was able to use that to get some more freelance projects. And eventually that added to my portfolio that I could use to apply for companies. And typically, I think what you would want to look for, I'm sort of clubbing another question in the chat. For your first role, you do want a portfolio. In this, you want to include some projects where you show them some depth of work, which is typically people go for something like Dribble or Behance. What you want to do is you want to take some product brief, solve it through the design process, and then use that and show people that you've done it. So typically for early stage designers, what companies look for is proof of work. Now, proof of work could come in the form of your past internships. If you don't have any, it could come through freelance projects you've done, or it could come from personal projects. These are projects that you've done either in a hackathon in college, or maybe with a couple friends of yours, or even something that you put together as a weekend project just so that you could have something.
Great, thank you. So we have quite a lot of questions in the chat, so I guess we'll tackle them one by one. So the next one is, what are the skills you recommend for the UX design industry, and how do you recommend to start working for UX design?
So I can give a short answer, then I'll pass it on. I would say for UX, so one thing you want to think about early on is what kind of roles you want to apply for. So typically in the industry, you have roles which are product designer, which is typically a UI UX design role, also called a full stack designer. You have some roles which are UX research, which are only focused on that part. You have roles like visual designer, which might be, a totally different thing. You want to identify what kind of roles appeal to you the most. Typically, you can do this by checking out some job listings in companies you're interested in. And based on that, your portfolio will slightly vary and the kinds of projects will slightly vary. So the skills that I would recommend for entering the industry would be dependent on what kind of jobs you want. Typically, if you're not sure about this, the route I suggest people go is to apply for product designer roles, which is typically involves the entire design process, UI design, bit of prototyping and visual design, UX research, and the full stack.
Just to add on to that, I think that it's really important to not put the focus on learning necessarily design tools, but to focus on some of the more like soft skills that have to do with product design. So whether that's research methodologies or whether that's product thinking or just understanding how users experience flows, some really great resources that you can look at to get an understanding of like some industry standards is to look at Apple's human interface guidelines or Google material design and understand how those are impacting all of the at least app or mobile based products that are out there right now. And then on the point about learning, programs, they're always changing all of the time, and a lot of the skills between them are interchangeable. Like if you know how to use one vector-based software like Sketch, you can probably pick up how to use Figma really quickly. So I wouldn't prioritize that, but really prioritize getting the basics and the methodologies down.
Yeah, to add to what Alex just said, the importance of soft skills. For me, the most important soft skill that I want to get more of and expect from other designers is the power of observation. Being able to observe a situation, pinpoint the problem, come up with a hypothesis as to what's causing the problem and solutions that can fix that problem, and being able to come up with a plan to run experiments to see if that solution could actually solve that problem, and learning from the experiment and pivoting your thoughts to make sure if you're wrong about the hypothesis, being able to pivot, keep an open mind to come up with a different solution to fix a problem. That soft skill is the most important thing in terms of becoming a UX UI designer, product designer, because when it comes to hard skills like learning how to use Figma, Sketch, or the tools, it's actually really easy to learn. You just have to follow the set number of steps to get to the mastery of it. But when it comes to soft skills, you have to start early. It has to be your everyday behavior to get better at it. And by having this soft skill, you will be able to figure out what hard tool you actually need to solve what problem. But without the soft skills, those tools are basically useless.
Can I ask something based on that? How do you recommend that we develop these observational skills?
Can I take it on, or does anybody else? Okay. So in my case, it was something natural to me from the beginning because I was a very shy kid. Me being able to speak in front of people like this was not a natural thing either. So, English is my second language as well. So when I first came here in middle school, I just found myself just sitting in the back of the classroom, just watching people and just interact with each other. That was just my everyday behavior, just making observations and just creating hypotheses about why they're doing what they're doing. So that was my just everyday habit that I had that helped me become a better observer in a way.
I can add a little bit to that, which is try to look in your everyday life for places where the experience could be better. The next time you're frustrated with something, it's probably a chance that there's a gap there that can be addressed. So let me give you a very quick example. Um, let's say you're at the store and you're checking out, you've got milk, you've got eggs, and you're at the self checkout counter. And now you get stuck. You're like, hey, I don't know what to do. I'm confused. Or it starts making a beeping sound, and you're like, wait, what's going on? Now that's a user experience. You just experience frustration or confusion. Now, being able to observe that is one thing. But when you eventually leave the store, think about if some of those variables had changed, if there was better communication on a particular thing, if it told you, hey, if this happens, try this, how would your experience change? So that's one small example. But once you get into the habit of doing this, you'll start observing these opportunities in multiple places. And now this could be in the physical world, but now, since a lot of us are indoors, you could definitely do this with apps. So let's say you're on TikTok and you're like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if there was a feature where I could do this? Or the next time you feel like, hey, this is something, let me give you a very recent example. So Elon Musk was on Clubhouse recently. He did a talk and a lot of people attended that. Now, when he made the tweet saying that, hey, I'm going to be on TikTok at 10 p.m. EST, a lot of people are like, 10 p.m. EST, what is that? Like, what is that time in my time zone? Right? So there, now that is an observation. You could then go one level deeper and say, what if Twitter were to show that time to every person in their own time zone? Now that, of course, will Twitter do it? Will they not? That's a different question. But try to observe these kind of opportunities in your everyday life.
Yeah, I would definitely say exactly what Abhinav and Sung have both said, looking at things. And honestly, it's kind of funny. You might end up like, I sometimes joke that I've like ruined the internet for myself because I can't go through a website without being critical about the different user flows. Like I was checking out for cat food today on the PetSmart website and I was like, what is going on with this user flow right now? But honestly, getting to be that like that level of critical about everything that you're experiencing is great. And you can take it outside of the screen too. Like our entire world is designed, and the thinking about design in that way lets you open yourself up when you're working on product design as well to thinking of more innovative ways for people to experience things too.
Okay, I have a question. Can I ask? Yeah. So my name is Miriam. I wanted to ask what are outside sources or like courses, certifications would you recommend, even like how to develop a technical skill? Because if the courses at our university, for example, don't satisfy our eager for UX UI, like there's very limited, I feel like, ones, and I want to explore beyond that to better prepare me for the industry.
So I'll give you a short answer. Maybe somebody else can jump in as well. I would say for a lot of stuff, you can study online, which is, let's say, if you're feeling the need that, hey, I need to get better at visual design. There's definitely a lot of visual design tutorials on YouTube. You can go to Udemy, uh, and you can find them and they'll be amazing. However, when it comes to things around soft skills, it gets a little harder doing this via Udemy because there's typically no feedback. You can learn this from them, but then let's say after you do it, nobody's there to give you feedback on how exactly you did it. So for that, I would typically recommend, like, internships are great for that reason because you actually work with a mentor who's able to do it. There's a bunch of boot camps as well, which take a different approach. They say, we have a 3 month, 6 months, 9 month boot camp. They say something like that. But I would say in the end, you will have to balance a good amount of self-learning, like using the internet, along with any mentor that teaches you anything. So I would say try to get comfortable with using multiple sources rather than, trying to find the one perfect source that can teach you everything.
And just to add on to that, learning how to teach yourself something from a collection of resources is a skill in and of itself that's going to serve you for the rest of your career. So just practicing that is a great thing. If you're looking for more like certification or something, you know, there's the Masters of Information program that you can come join me at. And there is also opportunities for you to, you know, with your friends, if you have other friends that are interested in UX, form little groups and like practice doing things like giving each other crits on your work, or, you know, practice doing user testing or user interviews or things like that. And that'll help you build some of those soft skills too.
And what I always recommend is that as a junior designer, I encourage them to actually try to learn backwards. Meaning, if you're just trying to go out there and learn more about, you know, color theories, you know, the Gestalt principles, or like grid formats, when you just read these textbooks or to watch these tutorials from the bottom up, it looks like you're just looking at a bunch of Lego pieces with having no idea or context as to what you're supposed to do with them, or what the end result of those Lego pieces would be. But when you look at a like popular, for example, you know, the design, UI design on Instagram, for example, you look at it, you're like, oh, I'm gonna start by just copying it exactly. I mean, pick by pixel. And then as you're copying it, you're realizing, oh, what tool do I need to make that work, make it look like that? And as you're using that tool, you have all these questions about, how do I make that button look like that? You know, how do I, why did I use this color? And then as you drill down deeper and deeper, you're like, oh, maybe this is why they use this color. Maybe this is why they use this font. And then as you're copying these, popular designs, you get to ask questions, you realize what you don't know. And when you realize what you don't know, you can figure out what questions to ask to go to the Google search to find the learning resources that you need to get better at what you're missing. And the great thing about learning backwards is that now because you know what you don't know and you're searching for specific things, when you actually find these learning resources, it sticks with you for a longer period of time, and you can retain the knowledge much better.
Yeah, thank you. I totally agree with what you guys are saying. As someone who's taken already some UX UI courses, I totally understand what you talked about, the idea of UX UI is integrated in your life, like little things that you use that ticks those annoying triggers. So what I wanted to ask, especially because you brought up certifications and masters and all that, does that weigh any heavier than having no experience? Like what would you, because obviously having experience would be better, but like let's say you're soon to be graduating, or maybe you just want to get experience and enter the industry to understand if this is the path for you. Would pursuing certifications or a master give you an edge in helping a job, or does that not matter? Like, do you guys know in this industry? Thank you.
So my short answer would be that if you look at a lot of job descriptions, they say one of the requirements says, let's say a BA or an HCI degree or equivalent experience, right? You'll typically see this term a lot. Now, or equivalent experience roughly translates to, what it means is that you can make up for the lack of a master's degree through either internships or past projects that you've done. But then there are some roles which do weigh heavily on masters. So from my experience, a lot of UX research roles I've seen typically do require master's degrees. However, product designer roles typically don't. But maybe you guys can speak from what it's like over there. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. Like, even though Amazon says they're not looking for anyone with a certain degree or a certain graduate from certain schools, it's funny that like they continue to hire people from certain schools with certain degrees. It's just a fact. And so if you go to a certain school and a certain degree, there is a benefit to that. But in general, personally, I don't look at the degree or the certifications when I'm hiring. I value the designer's portfolio and their ability to present their thoughts in person or over the phone much better than just a piece of paper that says you're a good designer.
Thank you so much, guys.
Just to add on to that really quickly, another great thing about if you do decide to go to, a university or boot camp or something like that, you get those alumni connections as well. And that's really useful in the internship hunting process or the job hunting process as well. Having somebody that can introduce you to somebody else is always a lot easier than sending out that scary LinkedIn connection request. So yeah, that's another advantage.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's unfortunate, but nowadays Amazon gets so many job requests that unless you're referred by somebody inside, people don't usually look at your resume. That's just unfortunate, but that's the reality.
Thank you guys. I want to leave the questions for other people. Thank you for your time.
I do have a question. So since we're talking about hiring, what are the kind of questions that we can expect during interview, and what are you expecting from us?
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I can just to give you, since other people could give the recommendations on how to interview better at other jobs, I'll make my answer specific to Amazon. So if you want to apply for a job at Amazon, you have to be familiar with this concept called Amazon leadership principles. You can just Google it and it'll come up. And a lot of companies have these leadership principles, but Amazon, we take it extra, like it's extra special to us. So unless you know what those are and be able to speak to it and describe your past experience in relationship to each of the principles, you will not get that interview, or you will not pass the interview. So make sure to look for it and study for it.
Yeah, I can give a more general answer. So to give some background, when I was at Unacademy, I built a design team there from scratch to about 8 people at its peak. And to answer to the previous question, out of those 8 people, only one had a design degree. I'm not even talking masters, like their bachelor degree. So like we had somebody from an architecture background, somebody who used to be a chartered accountant. We had somebody from an engineering background. So very diverse. Typically, how the interview process works is the interviewer is looking for, so if you have that proof of work, which is you've submitted your portfolio in advance, that's typically why you're there in the interview. So that's typically what they use to screen applicants. Once you're in, most interview rounds are very similar, and they're focused on getting you to explain your past projects. So for example, let's say you have one case study in your portfolio. They'll ask you, tell me more about this project and tell me more about how you approached it. And what they're looking for is, number one, how you articulate. How are you able to talk about your process, what you did, what was the brief given to you, what are the paths that you went down, and eventually how did you arrive at a solution? And typically this is a starting point for a conversation when they start asking you, they'll ask you, hey, what about this screen over here? Did you consider an alternative where we could do this? So that's when they start asking you questions about why you took certain decisions. And what they're trying to do is, they're trying to assess, firstly, understand more about your design process. But what they're trying to see is, when given that kind of feedback, do you get defensive? Or are you like, hey, I did consider it. However, this is what happened. I did that. So most interviews are some variation of this. In addition, some companies also do take-home assignments, which is after doing that initial round, with one designer on the team, they might give you a take-home assignment that is typically like, let's say they give you 24 hours for it or 48 hours from it. And they give you a small assignment like, here's a problem statement. You need to design 2 or 3 screens for it, or one flow for it. And then that becomes the thing that they discuss in the next round, where they will ask you, okay, with this problem statement that we gave you, how did you approach it? What were the options that you considered? Why did you do this instead of doing that? And typically companies have a couple of standard problem statements that they give to all candidates. So that way they are able to assess, this person, how are they compared to the average? Once this happens, you might have another portfolio review round, or a technical round, sometimes it's called, which is a variation of the previous rounds, but now you would do it with somebody maybe on the leadership team. So you might have somebody who is a manager, or you might have somebody who is a head of design. Some companies also include interviews with product managers. Smaller startups might also do it with their founders, with some developers. But in comparison to engineering interviews, where there's a lot of technical questions and you need to know what data structures are and everything, design interviews are more about the work that you've already done.
Just to add on to that as well, some other questions that I've gotten in interviews before have been around whether you've worked with developer teams or engineering teams, whether you've shipped a product, which like for an internship, they might not necessarily expect you to have that experience. But if you're going for an entry-level position, they will be curious as to whether you've worked cross-functionally and how you've been able to explain the design perspective of things to other teams that are focused on, you know, the engineering metrics or something like that.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So I'm just gonna go through the chats one more time. So which one's more important to employers of UX design, strong portfolio piece or previous internship experience?
I think I take both of them equally important. Obviously, you have to have a good portfolio as a foundation, but if you have a, usually previous good internship program can be reflected as part of the portfolio. So that's what I expect to see. If you had a good internship experience and if you produce good results, you should include it in your portfolio and let it be part of your portfolio that I review.
Yeah, what I'd add to that is both are equally important because I think both are a type of proof of work. You know, you might be hearing this term for the first time, so let me just share a quick tweet about this that I had made. Sorry for the self-promotion if it's excessive, but typically proof of work also includes things like how active are you in the design community? Have you been sharing your work publicly? It could mean the relationships you have with designers. And typically what people don't really weigh too heavily on either one. So for example, even if you don't have a personal brand online, it's not that it will be held against you. They will then look at the other stuff that you do have. So this proof of work could be past internships. Sometimes it's freelance projects. Sometimes it's hackathon projects. It's the kind of stuff you're putting out online. Let's say you have a YouTube, you have a blog where you post your stuff. That technically could also count as proof of work, because typically these kind of things show who you are as a person in a more rounded way. And this typically gives more things to talk about during interviews.
I think that everything that I would say has been touched on already by Abhinav and Sung. The only thing is make sure that if you are including team projects in your portfolio, that you're very clear about what you contributed to the project as whether it's a research side or on the design side, because that's something that will be important for you to be answering questions about during the interview. You don't want to misrepresent your skills in any way.
Okay, so I'm just going through the chats again because like a lot of questions were answered. So does the degree or major matter in the UX UI career job field?
Yeah, so just to give you a couple examples, my design manager at Amazon was a singer, is a wedding singer, and that was his full-time job. My coworker on the same team was a race car driver. So and there was another coworker who came from studying in a major university with a master's degree. So anyone could actually product designer can come from any walks of lives. That's what I can say.
Yeah, 100% agree with that.
Definitely. And I find that like the more diverse a team is and the more different ways of thinking that people have when approaching a problem, the stronger the team is going to be in solving whatever their focus is. In my program, I think I'm one of 2 or 3 students who have any type of formal design background. I have friends who studied kinesiology, friends who studied business, friends who studied life sciences. So it really varies. And that's what makes a strong UX designer, is bringing in those different ways of thinking.
Yeah, so basically what we're saying here supports our theory about the importance of soft skills, right? Because just because my design manager was a wedding singer, just because my coworker is a race car driver, it does not mean they don't know how to think. They just had a strong, basically observational thinking skills with their personal, history and experiences from their walks of lives. And they basically brought that into their job and proved that they actually knew how to execute on their ideas, and those ideas are executed based on their understanding of human behaviors. So that's once again the importance of the soft skills that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, and so we have many questions about like any experience or advice for getting into the UX UI technical writing, or just the UX UI industry in general.
For technical writing, I would say still have a portfolio of your work and go through it like a case study, in the same way that you would if it was like a design or a research case study. Highlight how you made those decisions about your writing. I think that that'll definitely help to set you apart.
Yeah, so I'm a designer and English is my second language. So I was always, I was never confident about my writing. I'm still not confident about my writing. I'd always write something and show it to somebody else. What do you think? Did I screw up the grammar? Was it a typo? I always second question second guess myself. So just having a habit of putting, whether you think it's right or wrong, whether you think it's perfect or not, just execute something and share with other people and get feedback. It's just like anything, whether it's design or writing, it's the same. That's the steps you have to follow to get better at it.
Okay, so we've got another one about if you're not sure about entering this field and want to explore it further, is there a way to gain practical experience?
Make yourself do a design sprint, like choose a random problem, make yourself do some kind of, 24-hour or, full week if you want to do the full 5 weeks, or sorry, not 5 weeks, full week if you want to do the full 5 days. And just see if you actually enjoy the process and see which parts of the process that you actually enjoy, and then you can keep exploring that way.
Yeah, like earlier, I've been, did I say your name right? Okay. What just like what he said, dabble with freelance work. Like before you take on big projects, just list yourself on freelance.com and take on a simple logo project, simple, the web page design, like whether it's on Squarespace or just custom design, just execute something and see if you like to enjoy the process, or volunteer yourself at a local startup and just do whatever it takes to learn something from that experience and see if you like it. So at the end of it, if you like it, go for it. If you don't, you can pivot your career at any time.
Yeah, and I think with freelance, a lot of people have this fear that I'm still a beginner. Why would somebody pay me for my skill? And the truth is, people are looking for freelancers at every level. So there are clients out there who would, let's say, want to work with me, but then there's also clients who cannot afford me, right? Who are maybe just starting out, or they don't have the budget for it. Or there might be clients who, want to do a side project. So they're looking at, how can I just get this off the ground, even if it's not perfect? So keep in mind that there are clients looking for designers at all levels. And, it's not necessary that you need to start with a paid project. So one way to kickstart that cycle of how do you show work is to just let people around you know that this is something you can do. So for example, if it's websites, just posting on your Instagram story that, hey, I'm designing websites, I have some time. If you have a local business or if you run, something and you're affected by COVID, I'll set up a website for you within 48 hours, no charge. And when you do this, this can then give you that experience of putting something together, in just 48 hours. You can use something like Squarespace or whatever you might like. But a lot of times what I've seen is these kind of things do turn into either paid opportunities. So that same person returning and saying, hey, I really liked what you did, but now I want to get more serious. So now I want to add this new thing here. I want to build a better website. So that can then become a paid project. Or if not them, they might say, hey, I really like the work you did. A friend of mine is also looking for something like this. Can I connect you? So then that becomes your paid project. So of course, online freelancing platforms are definitely, one way to do it, but you can find a lot of these things in your network. It's just that you have to really put it out there. You have to say that, hey, this is something that I can do for you, so that people can reach out to you.
I had a question about when it comes to like internships and starting positions. So I know that you mentioned about like product designer roles, but like what other key terms should I be looking for once you graduate or once you want to start your an actual, in the workforce kind of situation simulation?
Yeah. I mean, I'll give you a short answer, which is typically the most common roles that I've seen. Now, this might vary by country, but let me tell you a little bit about in India as well as a bit in Silicon Valley. The two types of roles I've seen that are most common are product designer, also known as UI UX designer, and UX researcher. Now, these are the most two common roles that you see. But then sometimes the problem is different companies call the same role by different names. So what you would have to do is you would, like with just these two, you would be able to find most roles. But then it's a good idea to read a little bit about the job description to get an idea of what they're looking for. Because once you really get into it, there's a lot of specializations. But at the very top level, starting out, these are two of the most common ones.
And
Yes.
sorry, go ahead.
Alex.
Just going to say, some companies also call it an experience designer. So they won't use the UX title. I've seen Frog and IDEO both do that. So sometimes you'll see that with more multidisciplinary agencies.
So when you first start out in the product design, tech design field, most of the times when the companies hire junior designers, they're usually hiring them to do manual labors that they don't want to do. And they often tend to be more of a graphic design work, like UI design, designing buttons and graphics in the background, and little icons and whatnot. So if you know how to design, if you're good at UI design, logo design, those graphic designs, it's easier for you to get your first step in the door in this in the tech product design field.
Yeah, and if it's ever intimidating, keep in mind that it's even if like it doesn't really matter which one you go for, because it's not that you get pigeonholed into that role for life. It's very common to see designers switching between different types of roles. Some choose to specialize early, some choose to do it later, some choose to not specialize at all. So you will be able to figure it out as you go.
Yeah, I'm definitely on the latter side. I chose not to specialize. So when I first started, I was a UI designer. But then when I started my company, in order to survive, I had to learn all these other skills because I didn't have the money to hire all these people. So I went from UI to UX to I went back into the product management and the strategy. So why I made that choice to go backwards in the process of creating a product instead of forward by learning how to code and program. That's a separate story, but I decided to expand my skill sets over time to be more versatile and become less expendable.
Yeah, you guys brought up a great argument about like being a generalist versus specialist in this industry, which I think it's fine. It's kind of hard to decide which one you want to be because certain companies praise specialists and others want generalists. It just depends on where you're applying. In terms of the specialists of UX UI, what would be like names? Like you mentioned product management, product designer, or UX UI designer. Is there any other specialist that I should be looking for if I wanted to specialize?
Yeah, so UX design, UI design, brand design, logo designer, product designer, experience designer. What else? What am I missing, guys?
You've got visual designer, motion designer, illustrator,
interactive designer,
Wow.
interaction designer. Google hires interaction designers. That's what they call it.
Sometimes there's the more like strategy focused job positions as well, like UX strategy or growth designer. I've also seen that term a couple of times.
And the UX researcher. I think that kind of covers it.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
What-
it's definitely a lot. I didn't think, like, I knew some of them were specialists, but the fact that you guys even went to like motion and like logo just to be a specialist in logo, that
Yeah. So basically, the bigger the companies that you want to interview with, like they have more niche roles that's more segregated. Like basically, at Google, they either hire interaction designer or visual designer. That's just, and at Amazon we have UX design or visual design. But the thing is, at Amazon, like UX designer does everything from strategy to UX to UI to the research sometimes. So it's just look at the job description, and even if you apply for a job based on job description, don't hold it as a concrete thing carved in stone. It'll change, and people might change their minds and use it for some other things.
for sure, for sure. It's never about the description is only because when you're applying. After that, your roles can change. That's what I've heard and what I've experienced.
Yeah.
You know, especially with startups. If it's a small
Yeah.
company, you get tasked with so many different things that you wouldn't even think, which is at the end of the day a good asset.
When you work for a structured company, bigger company, you'll be kind of pigeonholed into a small niche where you focus on developing that one skill set. As a UI designer, for example, actually you'd be discouraged to venture out of that and kind of do other things because you'd be stepping other people's toes in per se. And if there's a PM, if there's a UX designer, like they don't, if you're a UI designer, if you're labeled as a UI designer, they don't like it when you say stuff that can intrude in their specialties. Even though at Amazon we encourage everyone to like collaborate and share ideas, they still don't want you to actually like step on their toes. So yeah, so when you work for a bigger company, you get to focus on one small thing. But when you work for a startup, they really like encourage you or force you to go beyond your niche skill set. So if you're starting out in the beginning, I sort of encourage them to start out working at a structured company, so you can get better at one core skill set. And then once you become confident at it, when you're good and efficient at it, then you can expand to learning other skill sets or take on different roles at a startup. Because if you just go straight to startup, a lot of people get crushed because they have a lot of expectations of you to do a lot of different things, and no one's going to teach you, teach you or show you how to do it. So you have to figure things out on your own, and that's not a cup of tea for a lot of people. But if you have the drive, if you have the will to push through and learn everything all at once and deal with the pressure of startup, why not? It's up to the person's preference.
You said structured companies, like would they be
companies, like whether you're working for the well-known digital agencies or like in the big corporations like Amazon, Google, Facebook, even more advanced startups like Uber or Airbnb. Those are what I consider structured companies.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, if I wanted to apply for structured companies, my only concern is if I'm not experienced enough, like if I'm looking at my application versus other people's application, I don't have necessarily, I don't know, maybe I do, maybe I don't, but maybe I can't market it correctly. But like, how would I be able to convince them to hire me? I think that's my question.
Yeah, go ahead, Alex. I don't want to dominate the.
Sorry, I was just going to say two things. First of all, don't reject yourself before a company can reject you. This is something that I'm like struggling with on a daily basis right now too. And I know it's tough, but like just send it out there, because what's the worst thing that can happen? They don't send an email, like it's okay. And then the second thing is, if you really want to work at a company, reach out to folks on LinkedIn, try to connect with people that work there. Not only will it give you insight into what that company might be looking for or what roles they might be looking to fill, but it's also just great because you'll get a sense of who you could be working with and whether it's even a company or a team that you want to work with.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to give you an example, my first job, like my full-time job, was at a digital agency. And they didn't give me a full-time opportunity. They actually hired me as a 3-month temp position because I didn't even have a portfolio as a web designer at the time. My portfolio was just a bunch of ads from school or just personal projects that I did for ad campaigns. And I submitted it anyways, and they were actually hiring a senior art director. So I wasn't even qualified for the position, but I applied anyways because I had my current internship that I had. So I applied for it, and they brought me in because they liked my portfolio, and they interviewed me, and they flat out told me, "You're not qualified for this. You're not qualified for this position because we're looking for someone senior." So I was like, "Well, thank you for your opportunity, and if you don't find anyone, please reach out to me. I'll be available." And then basically I waited for a week, and then after that, every day I called them once a day. "Hey, have you found anyone? Hey, I was just checking to see, if you already filled that position." And then after about 2 weeks of calling them every day, they're like, "Okay, we'll give you a chance with a 3-month temp position." So that's how I got my foot in the door.
Yeah, persistence. No, for sure. I think that like biggest struggle that we all face, a lot of people face, is fear of rejection and procrastination. Those two kill all the determination and confidence that you have, and that's what you need. Thank you guys for the thank you.
Okay, so it is 5 p.m. now, I believe, and I know that we have a lot of questions coming, and like it's just so hard to keep track of everything. So we're gonna go into breakout rooms a little bit sooner. So yeah, you guys will have like you'll get 15 minutes with each of our speakers. So please do ask your questions over there.
And just to let you know, there's always some technical difficulty. So we'll be moving the speakers to each room after 15 minutes. So there will be like 1 minute. I'll give you guys a heads up before you switch over to finish off your sentences.
Yes, and with all the links and everything that the professionals have sent in the chat, I'm taking note of it. So we'll definitely send them to you somehow. So yeah, breakout room time.
I don't know if this is recording, just a heads up.
Yeah, it's okay. What's it called? I was just gonna say for the breakout rooms, is it possible for you to like make one more room and then just call it like whatever we have? So then like, because the thing is like now, technically I have access to just join whatever room I want right now.
Yeah, I just.
So you know what I mean?
Wait,
Like
you
if
do?
you wanna, yeah, I do. Like I mean, I think only I do, but I'm not sure. Hold up. 1 sec.
Oh, somebody entered the rating. Okay.
Yeah.
I think she was in the room 3.
Hi, Miriam. Hey, were you able to join a breakout room all right? Wait, you're on mute.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sending you.
Yeah.
It's okay. I'm sending you to a room.
Mhm.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we're.
Okay.
I don't know
So
if she's.
it's a little bit stuck.
I can't add another room. It's not letting me. Like
Okay.
I could just close them, but I can't open another one.
Okay, then it's fine because we can like I can just pop in and then just keep leaving the meeting and like
Yeah.
go back here.
Okay,
So
so
do you wanna join first?
yeah, number 1.
Okay, are we both joining the same room or are we gonna both join different rooms?
It'd be easier if we both join the same room, so we can
Same
drop
room?
out and drop back in if we have
Yeah,
to.
okay, we're clear. Okay, one okay, in order. Okay, let's
Number
go.
1?
Yeah, let's
Okay,
go.
bye.
Like as like one of the best portfolios I've seen because of the transitions and the way he presents the project was amazing. But at the same time, the content of the portfolio is amazing too. So even if you had like amazing transitions and presentation, if the content sucked, I would not have recommended it to other designers to look at as a reference. So the content is more important, but transitions and the layout, it's just secondary to me.
Thank you.
I actually have a question. I'm wondering, like, for you as a designer, do you conduct like user research or like any usability testing? And if so, like how do you conduct like UX research or recruit participants in your work?
So at Amazon, we use a platform called usertesting.com. We actually renewed a contract with them for 5 teams. We pay them so much. We're currently paying $210,000 a year for the certain amount of access for 5 different teams at Amazon. And basically the way it works is that you sign up and then you can create a number of different studies. And when you create a study, you can set up a screening questions and then basically set requirements for your testers. And then basically usertesting.com brings in the recruiters, and then they let them answer my screening questions. And then if they meet the demographic requirements, like I want someone between 20 to 40, I want someone who has a more of a web expertise in the web platform, and I want them to be. And then I want to ask them, have you recently have you changed your tires in the last 12 months? For example, if I'm going to show them a prototype related to tire changing experience, I want to make sure they have changed tires recently, so they have a recent memory of it, so they can answer my questions. So they can basically I use the screening questions to filter out the people that are not relevant. And once I have the target audience, then they're gonna go through the list of tasks and questions that I put together for them. And then once they're done, with it, what I do is I put them all in an Excel spreadsheet, the summary of their answers, and then tally it up. And then I put together an executive summary presentation for my team to look at. And if there are any important or interesting video clips, I make a video clip, like 10 to 30-second video clip to present along with my executive summary. So that's how I do it. And sometimes, usually this platform is supposed to be used to get more deeper insights into people's interactions with their prototype. And then it's not supposed to be used to create any statistically significant, it's not supposed to create any statistical significance. But I've done up to like testing 70 people just to get a lot of people backing my theories and hypotheses to prove a point at Amazon. So yeah, it is possible to get a certain amount of statistical significance with usertesting.com, but it's mostly for discovering anecdotal data with discoveries.
Thank you.
And then I got, there's a lot of questions. Is it wait. If you guys have questions, could you ask me on screen, because I have no idea like where the latest questions are in the chat.
Yeah, I just had a question. I just wanted to ask like what your favorite part about like your career in UX UI is, and what really drew you into pursuing this field, because like I really like design. Like I do graphic design like on the side, like I like illustrating stuff, and like UX UI seems really interesting as well, but like I don't know how to choose just like one thing. So if you have any like advice on that, that'd be great.
First of all, you don't have to choose. That's the great thing about being a junior designer. You don't have to choose, do it all. Like you, as a junior designer, one asset that you have that senior designers don't have is time. So with your availability and with your time, pursue every path you want. It's just that eventually, as you get better at certain things and as you make more money at on certain path, you have to decide, am I going to focus on the path that makes me more money or path that makes me happier? Eventually you have to choose. But right now in the beginning, just explore and experiment with everything that's on your mind. That's my recommendation. And then the reason why I chose UX UI design or product design was because previously I was in the advertising design, and I was in the field for like probably 10 years. And I grew to be hating it, partially because technically I was not making anything better. I was simply creating websites and apps to trick people into believing that, trick little kids to buying more Cheetos and Pepsi, for example. Like basically I'm they're not making their products better. Like Cheetos and Pepsi, they haven't changed forever since the inception of it. It's not any better, and yet they're using advertising to make people believe that they're somehow better than the other competitions or better than the previous versions of the products. So we can spend money on it. And I hated it, the fact that what I'm doing didn't contribute to making anything better. I'm just tricking people. So when I switched to technical design, product design, I enjoy the fact that I'm actually solving real problem that makes people's lives better, sometimes for the worse, but usually for the better. So that's what I like about product design.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I kind of wanted to like ask something kind of building off of that. So I was watching your like Instagram, TikTok kind of thing, and you mentioned that you recently redesigned like the Disney website. So can you like tell us a little bit about like the process of your work, and also just to, you know, because Disney is a pretty big thing.
Yeah, so the Disney actually, the design process was it's not the best process to go over the usual design process, because that was a job so just to answer the first question about Disney, when my startup, healthcare on-demand healthcare startup that I started in 2014 or 15, it basically imploded in 2017. So after that happened, I had to find a job. And one of the jobs that I got was a contract job at this digital agency. And when I joined them, they put me on this cool project. And they said, oh, this is to redesign Disney Rewards website. But then the thing is, when agencies bring in contractors, they don't bring in contractors, outsiders, to work on a cool project. They're bringing outsiders because they don't want to work on it. Like full-time designers at the agents don't want to touch it for whatever reason. So what happened was, when I got the design files from them, I realized that it was designed by a branding agency that Disney hired to take a stab at web design. Branding agency, they have no experience in designing a website, but because they use websites, they thought they could design one. And then when I opened their Photoshop file, when I opened it, was so big it wouldn't fit on the screen. And then the icons are pixelated. It wasn't designed for mobile. And then it was designed in Photoshop, not in Sketch or like Figma. So basically I can't tell the client that, everything's wrong, we have to redo everything. So basically what I did was I just spent extra time without charging to like basically rearrange everything from the ground up. So that's not a usual process when you design products. So that's what happened, but that's not the usual process. The usual process for me is, for example, let's see, what can I give? Okay. At Amazon, here's an example. This is not every case, but this is one example that's popular. So when I first joined Amazon, they were working on this feature that allows the customers to buy tire installation service with tires on Amazon and check out together. And then they're going to ship the tires to their tire service provider, and you just have to show up at the appointment to get your tires replaced. But then when I looked at the design done by the previous designer, I was like, maybe it's okay. But then that project was already like developed and ready to be launched, but for some reason my director didn't like it. So one of the concerns he had was the call to action for this new feature was too minimal. It's not easy to discover. It's not easy for the customers to discover it. So I ran a few testing sessions on usertesting.com and found out that a lot of people missed it. The call to action that the previous designer put together on this design, people couldn't find it. And people are frustrated that they're buying tires without tire installation service. So that was a big miss. So basically I had to convince the stakeholders that we need to redesign this. We can't launch this as is. And obviously the PM had a huge bad reaction to it because, like they spent time developing it. Previous designer like put a stamp on it saying it's done. But a new designer comes along and say, oh, well, we can't launch it like this. So the PM at first was upset about it, but then when I showed her the test results and video clips from the the usertesting.com, it convinced her. And then once we convinced her, we sort of like worked together to put a new design together and put it through the approval process at Amazon. So this new experience lived on the detail page on Amazon.com. And if you're familiar with how Amazon works, every facet of Amazon is managed by different teams. The detail pages are managed by a different team. So we had to, get their approval and blessing on the new design. So we had to work together to get approval from the detail team. And then once it's approved, which took 6 weeks, and that's when I had to run 70 plus testing sessions to prove the hypothesis that I had. And because at one of the meetings they said, oh, you ran tests with 12 testers. That's not statistically significant enough to prove your point. So I was like, watch me. I ran 70 tests and brought it back and proved my point. So went back and forth, got it approved, and then we pushed into development. It launched in within 3 months. And then once we launched, it basically became the top number 3 selling service on Amazon within 3 weeks. So that's how that's one of the examples of the design processes you could experience in product design field. Any questions, guys?
Yeah, so there's another question. So again, I'm a little bit confused with the chats too, but I think Darren had a question saying, do you think COVID has affected internship recruitment for this year? And when is the usual recruitment period for UX interns?
So I'm not sure about internship because our org personally do not hire design interns. They hire tons of engineering interns, but not design interns. But they at other orgs within Amazon they do. But I'm not sure about the availability at those other orgs. But we do need junior designers on my team. So I'd be happy to tap my director on the shoulder and say, hey, can we please hire someone? So if you're confident about your portfolio and if you have a good resume, please feel free to forward it to me.
Yay, making connections. Okay, so we've got more questions. Okay, what salary should a junior UX UI designer expect in Toronto? So I know you're not in Toronto, so maybe just in general.
Yeah.
I know it depends on experience and portfolio, but what should be the range?
So I know that based on what I see on TikTok, the junior engineers and designers that get hired by one of the big corporations like Amazon, Facebook, Google, and Uber and Airbnb and whatnot, they brag about making 6 figures as a junior designer. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know how they got that job with 6 figure as a junior designer as a first job, but that wasn't my experience. So when I first got in the industry, my first job was at the agency. So just to give you the background context, when you work for a big corporation, employers, you're more likely to get higher paycheck. But when you work for an agency that works for a corporation, like the digital agency, that boutique shops that work for the bigger corporations, you get less pay. Even though you're a designer at the same level, you get less paycheck just because this agency is a subsidiary to a bigger corporation. So, for example, when I first started a digital agency, my starting salary was $32,000 a year. That was over 15 years ago. So I guess it could be equivalent to $50,000 starting range. And then from there I went from 32 to 36, and then I jumped to 60, and I jumped to I went back down to 52, and then 72, 85, 100, and then 300. So,
hi everybody. How's it going?
Okay, so this is just how like the breakout rooms work. Like we often like run into things where like they just cut off when we're like switching them. But You guys are with Alex now.
He was getting into the money.
How's it going? How's everyone doing? Okay, awesome.
Good, good.
Any questions for me?
I have a question.
Yeah.
How did you go like choose your process of what masters you want to do? Because I'm at kind of the end of my undergraduate degree, so I know some people say to do Master of Design, MBA, stuff like that. How did you choose yours?
So when I was finishing up at OCAD University, I decided to apply actually for 2 master's programs at the Faculty of Information. They have a Master's of Information and they have a Master's of Museum Studies. I applied to do what's called the Combined Degree Program, which is you do both of them at the same time. And I got into that and was super excited, and then got into my first month of UX courses and was like, no, UX is definitely the jam. I'm just going to stick to the one master's program. The way that I chose to do UX was that I was coming already from a design background. So that was a bit of an indication to me that I wanted to stick with design. But one of my big frustrations with architecture was that it just takes too long to build a building. I'm excited about the things that I'm working on, and I wanted to see them happening a lot faster than, you know, the 3 to 5 year lead time on a construction project. And if you are looking at the program and you're not sure, like comparing one program to another, definitely reach out to profs there. You know, set up virtual e-coffees.
At a screen, so like how do you balance, like, you know, to take a break when you need it?
I think the way I see it is that like you can't be super productive all the time. Mainly because creativity doesn't work that way. Like if you're doing the exact same thing over and over again, very likely you're not going to feel, you know, creative or have that motivation to do stuff. So one interesting way that I'm not sure who taught this to me, but one interesting thing I do is I try to be productively creative and creatively productive, which is, although I do a lot of you know, I'm going to answer more along the productivity side, but how do I balance the two? I do a lot of like timed focus sessions. So I use this technique called Pomodoro. I use the Pomodoro app on my phone. So like that's 20 minutes, 25 minutes of work, then 5 minutes of break, 5 minutes, 5, and then a longer break of 30 minutes. So that is just one way to, because like, let me just be honest, I spend a lot of time on Twitter and Instagram. And I think it just affects my focus a lot. Like I would work for 10 minutes and then I'm like, I check my phone and I never know whether I'm going to, you know, be on that phone for 5 minutes or 40 minutes. So these timed Pomodoro sessions, let me just put that in the chat as well, really help me get focus back. But besides that, what I do for just like mixing things up, which is not monotonous, is I try to do things that will sort of spark creativity. So one thing that really helps with this is just taking long walks. If you ever feel stuck on a certain thing, taking a walk really helps with just getting some distance, and you're not doing anything. You're just engaging in a physical activity. Or just do something random, like just stand on your chair for 10 minutes, right? Why? It just breaks that monotony of, you know, I am doing a specific thing. I have been doing it for a couple of hours, and it just breaks that groove. So yeah, that's something I would suggest.
Thank you. Does anyone else have a question?
Yeah, I'd love to ask a question. So I'm wondering if, you know, as growing designers, it's really important to, you know, stay in the loop with the design community. So I'm wondering, like, if you have any design mentors that you have, like on social media. It doesn't even have to be like, you know, personal. I'm just wondering if you have any that you follow.
I mean, for me, I actually don't, because I mean, the kind of work I'm doing now is more of running the business rather than design. So 10K Designers, it's a 3-month program where I teach UI UX design, and at the end, you know, help you find a job and internship. So most of my work right now is more around how do I grow the business, and you know, how do I hire for teams and stuff like that. So I don't really follow too many designers on Twitter. I do follow a lot of business folks though. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like in terms of business, do you have anyone that you really look up to?
So let me give a general answer and then a specific answer. In general, I try to follow on Twitter very liberally. So if somebody looks interesting, I just follow. But then I also unfollow very liberally, which is if, after a week, I feel like I'm not really feeling it, unfollow. And what this does is it helps me sort of not get stuck with a certain group of people that I'm following. And it helps me get more people into it all the time. So it's almost like every, let's say, every couple of weeks, you have new people coming in. So I'd say Twitter is really good that way because you can find a lot of different people. And one interesting way to find these people is if you ever find, let's say you're following somebody, very likely that they retweet certain people. So then you can find people they follow. Or a more direct way to do this is somebody whose tweets you really like, go to who are they following and then follow some of them. And then keep the thing about Twitter that also makes it really hard to stick to it is that it's very dependent on the kind of people you follow. If you don't follow the right people, your Twitter experience might not be good. So I would say just keep refreshing. But in specific, I watch a lot of Gary Vee, like mostly because I like his energy. But besides that, if you want to actually check out Twitter, you can just sort of check out some people I follow. Maybe you find someone interesting there.
Oh no, go for it.
I just wanted, I guess this is a quick question, but so I connected with a designer like a while ago because I asked her if like how she stays up, like keep up to date, updated with like technology industry trends and all that stuff, and she kind of recommended downloading like this Google extension called Muesli, something like that. So
Yeah.
like I don't know much about it, and do you have any other resources similar to that, like for all of us to kind of stay updated with the industry?
Yeah, for sure. So Muesli, it's this Chrome extension that every time you open a new tab, it shows you a bunch of stuff. Like this stuff is things that are trending on, let's say, Product Hunt, Y Combinator, a bunch of different news sources basically related to design, technology, startups. So Muesli is a great way to just do that with very low effort. Like you can just set that up every time you open a new tab, you get some stuff. But then personally, I mean, I used it for a bit, but it got really distracting for me, which is I would sit down to work, open a new tab, and then I just go into a rabbit hole. So personally, the approach I take is um, following interesting people on Twitter, and actually not just Twitter. So Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Now, YouTube, I think, doesn't have so much of design content, but Twitter and Instagram do. So yeah, so that's what I would suggest.
Sorry, just building off of that, what do you think about like the medium and also like LinkedIn, like same idea, like following people that are interesting from the UX and UI industry and getting information from there?
I mean, you can definitely give it a shot. Personally, LinkedIn doesn't really seem interesting to me. It just feels, I don't know. Personally, I don't like the type of content that's posted on LinkedIn. It seems like just grand stories of weird stuff that happened in their workplace. Twitter just feels a little bit more authentic to me. But you can definitely try it out. Yeah. I'm not sure what percentage of designers are more active on LinkedIn or Twitter, but I would assume more of them are active on Twitter than LinkedIn.
I actually want to add to Elite's question, or do you have something else to ask?
No.
No, you're good. Okay. No, I wanted to ask because I like that the fact that you can get full honesty on these other social media platforms. So you mentioned like Insta, Twitter, YouTube. Who would you look for? Like, is there certain, or is it like you mentioned before, where it's the people you follow and then refollow? Like, who are your go-to people?
I would say try to find just 2 or 3 people to start with, and these 2 or 3 people can be just something off a whim. So, for example, let's say let's just do this as a small exercise, right? So my Twitter that I've posted there, just go to the people I'm following and try to find just 3 people that seem interesting to you and follow them. And now try to check out Twitter for a week and see what are the kinds of stuff they are retweeting, that they are sharing, and then follow maybe 2 or 3 more people. So the reason I don't really give recommendations of follow these 3 people is because everybody sort of resonates with different types of people. Like some people really turn, might just turn you off the way they present their stuff. Some people you might really resonate with. So I would say, it's different for everyone. Yeah.
I actually had a question about in terms of like experience and like where your resume started. Like, what was like your first job that you did, and how did you like go all the way to like design at an academy? Like, how did that transition, from where you were to where you are now?
Got it. So I'll just quickly share my LinkedIn as well, so you can just check out that timeline. But for me, I started freelancing when I was in college. So did a bunch of projects. It was nice because like I actually enrolled in computer science because I was super inspired by the social network. Uh, I mean, that gives a hint of how old I am technically, but I was maybe in 11th, 10th grade or something like that when the social network came out. So I was super inspired. I was like, damn, I really want to build the next Facebook. So I got into computer science, but then realized, yo, we're not building apps. Like, I don't really enjoy coding at all. So that's sort of when I started experimenting with Photoshop, making a few graphics here and there for college festivals, things like that. Um, that's how I slowly got into freelancing. Started doing some apps, some websites. A lot of them weren't great. Some of them were okay. And then eventually, once I was graduating, I decided to actually continue freelancing. So 6 months after graduation, I was just freelancing. But then I really got bored just doing that by myself, sitting at a Starbucks. So that's when I then started looking at what companies are there, in my city and other cities. And the one thing that I've tried to focus on a lot there was just really, really stalking who the designers at those companies were, because your growth is really dependent on the people around you. So any company that you're applying to, um, you really want to see what are the kinds of designers that work there. You want to try to find their personal websites, their Twitter, and think to yourself, do I want to become like these people? So as an example, you might check out designers from Salesforce, the company, and you might check out their work and be like, it doesn't look good to me at all. It sort of seems boring. And you're like, okay, maybe this is not the right company for me. You might check out Facebook, might be interesting. Or, you might check out smaller startups. And with smaller startups, you really want to find a good team, because any company you join, you are going to eventually become like the designers in that team. So it's good if the bar is high.
Thank you. It really helps that the feedback about stalking. Well, stalking, but that's that's really great input, because like it's very hard as someone who's recently about to graduate. It's very hard to like narrow down which company you want to work at and what actually is a best fit for you. Because like you might have ideals to work at like Google or Shopify or something, but like it's really like, am I compatible with this? Will this help me grow? That sort of thing. Thank you.
Yeah. And one of the things about bigger companies is that I think by default, all of us would love to work at big companies because, it looks great on your resume. But you have to realize that it might not be as fun as you thought. Oh shit, 1 minute. So let me just quickly wrap that up. So there's a joke, okay, in the industry that whenever you meet a designer from Facebook and you ask them what they work on, they'll say something like, I'm the senior product lead for the sidebar icons team, right? Which is on the Facebook website. Their team is responsible for making the sidebars icons, right? Because at a bigger company, when you have thousands of designers, the kind of work you do is one feature and you do just that feature for 6 months. Some people might be okay with that. Personally, I don't enjoy that at all. So for me, most of my roles, I've tried to work at smaller startups where there is a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of things to set up. And then in these startup roles, typically you can grow much faster as well. And then with that agility, then you might become a better match for bigger companies who are trying to bring that kind of experience into their organization as well.
At an entrepreneurial level, essentially. That's
Yeah.
what I do. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure.
Hello.
Hello. What's going on?
Hi. I have a quick random question. What is your TikTok username?
asked it to Alex, right? Alexandra as well.
Yeah, you can call me Alex too. It's all good.
Perfect. You can call me Sam.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I was asking about like I want to know more about like the UX UI role, I guess. So I'm just wondering like maybe you could what are like your some favorite projects or like yeah like what are your projects and you.
Yeah, for sure. So one of my favorite projects that I did was actually one of the first projects I did in my master's degree. It was a project where our client was the Innovation Hub, which is a not a student organization, but it's an organization at the University of Toronto that focuses on improving students' experiences. And they came up with this question for our whole class of, just design something that'll make the undergrad experience better. And we specifically as a team chose to focus on financial literacy and financial empowerment because Toronto's an expensive city, U of T is an expensive school, life is expensive, it's really fun, right? So we did a project on that, and that was great for me because like personally, I really care about bringing more access and more equitable access to information for different folks, and financial empowerment is a huge part of that. So working on that project, which was a mobile app for students that would help teach them the basics of like budgeting, of how their credit score works, of how they can save money better or how they can develop better saving and spending habits. That was something that was like a big passion project for me. And even though it's the first UX project that I ever worked on, I went back and reworked some of the designs as my skills got better. And it's still something that I show in interviews. Like I had a portfolio review interview yesterday, and that was one of my projects that I went through. So yeah, I'm proud of that one.
Hi.
Hi.
So I had like a question about I'm having trouble networking because I don't want to waste the other person's time by, asking about the career or like how is it a way to kind of introduce yourself without kind of getting lost in like all the emails they probably receive?
Yeah, so I would say instead of sending emails, it's probably better to connect through LinkedIn. You have the opportunity to write a quick little note in there as well. Always send people notes whenever you're sending them a connection request, and do a bit of creeping on their LinkedIn page. That's like a great way for you to understand a bit more about them. If I have a connection like a personal connection, somebody that they also know, or if we both went to the same school, or even if we just both grew up in the same like area or something, I'll mention that, and that helps you to stand out. And don't think of it from the perspective that you're annoying somebody, because people love to talk to new people. Just think of it as an opportunity for you to connect with another person. You both have some shared interest in user experience design. So there's going to be interesting things for you to both talk about, even if on every other thing in the world, you're like, complete opposites. So it's always going to be an enjoyable experience for both people. And if somebody doesn't have the time to talk with you, don't take it personally, because like everyone's got their own stuff going on,
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering what made you pursue a master's in UX and not do something like boot camps or online courses?
So my mom's from the Caribbean. If anyone knows much about the Caribbean culture, education is like a huge thing. Like having a degree is you got to have a degree in something. So that was one of the things for sure. The other thing is that I knew that doing a master's would give me access to like co-op programs and things like that. And personally, I knew that my confidence level in my design wasn't one where I was going to feel confident just reaching or applying out to internships if I didn't have some kind of like school system that was helping me to find the opportunity. So I knew that that was going to be a really big advantage of going and doing a master's program. And then the other thing as well is that I really wanted it to be longer than just 12 weeks. And I know a lot of boot camps are quite condensed in their length. And I really like the idea of investigating something a bit deeper. There's been a lot of opportunities in the second year of my master's that I've gotten just because, you meet more people and you get deeper connections with them after the first year. And if I'd just done a 12-week boot camp, like, I don't know if I would have been able to do that, because it takes me a bit of time to like find my footing in a situation. So yeah, that's why I chose the master's.
I have one question. I remember like earlier you mentioned how like in iSchool, I guess you're part of like a book club or something like that. So
we're a reading group, but it's okay.
Yeah, like so I'm I'm just wondering, do you have any recommendations in terms of like UX or any, related books or podcasts and like
Yeah.
any pages to follow?
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so this is the book we're reading right now. Oh, my Zoom thing's going to be mad at me. It's called Design Justice, but I'm going to put the URL to our reading group website in there into the chat for you, racismgoneviral.ca, and you'll be able to see all of the books that we're reading. Basically, our reading group is focusing on two different aspects of how tech intersects with systemic racism. So the first is how do things like algorithmic bias and social media impact and perpetuate systemic racism. The other side of it is we're looking at the COVID-19 pandemic and how like internet misinformation and medical racism are also contributing to the perpetuation of systemic racism. And it's been a really amazing experience. It's me and 3 other people in my cohort at my program getting together every week, talking about the chapter we've read, talking about any related articles we've read. And it's led to some really awesome opportunities as well, because we've got to meet some of the authors of the books and have conversations with them. And they're more on the theory and the research side of things. And they get really excited about talking to designers who are focused on how to actually apply what they're writing about to change the systems and redesign what's going on in the world so that we can have a more equitable existence together. That's the goal.
Thank you. Love that.
I actually have a question.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say is the like big difference between UX and UI? Because they're like interrelated, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes like you don't necessarily know like what it is exactly. So how would you actually explain it?
Yeah, so UI is focused on the front end components and the visual design of things, so the actual user interface, and you're thinking about how those look. So if you were thinking of it from the perspective of like of a use case, for example, the use case for UI is you're looking at a button and you're trying to decide whether, sorry, not a use case, but like a user task. You're looking at it from the perspective of, do I want this button to have a corner radius, or do I want it to be square? Like it could be that specific and that drilled down. And there's research as to why you might want to go one direction as opposed to the other. Rounded corners are more friendly. That's the TDLR, but or TLDR, yeah. And then UX design is focused on the user's experience through the project. So you might never touch what the front end design actually looks like if you were just focused on UX. And that's because you're focusing on like that task flow analysis, how somebody moves through something. Are they looking to click on a link, and then what are they expecting to see on the other side of that link? But you're not thinking about what the link looks like necessarily.
Okay, so it's more like UI is more design, like the actual design, and UX is more like the thinking behind it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why you'll usually find the two roles combined, because you can't really think of them as like siloed things when you're designing anyways. They have to go together. When you're using UX, you're imagining what those affordances will be that will let somebody know that they can click a button, or that they can, go to a different page or whatever. So they really are generally interrelated. I've never really seen a role where it's just like completely split up, at least not for entry level. Maybe when you get higher up into companies and it gets split.
But when you're actually like looking for, usually when a company looks for UI designers, most of the time I see that they want people who actually know HTML, CSS, JavaScript.
Mhm.
So
Those might be, yeah, those might be companies that are looking for like unicorns. And if you don't have that skill set, like that's probably not the right company. But it's good to know a bit of HTML and CSS. I don't know anything about JavaScript, to be perfectly honest with you, but it's just nice because if I have to go in and like inspect the code to see how something actually ended up when it's been implemented versus how it was in the design, I need to know at least what I have to control F and like find. So it's useful to kind of have some very basic knowledge of that. But honestly, my knowledge of HTML doesn't go past me coding like Neopets websites as a child. So it's pretty basic.
Hey,
okay, thank you.
can I ask you a question?
Mhm.
I was wondering, like, as a student, like, how do you like find the time, or how do you find like or how do you use like platforms to complement your like academic learning with the more like hard skills, soft skills learning that you do on the side?
Yeah, so I'm an obnoxious morning person, I have to say. I'm like up at 6 a.m. every single day. Um, my partner hates it, but it's fine. And so that's my thing is like I wake up early and that's when I kind of do my like input for the day. Like I'll be on like Musely or I'll be on, Medium or I'll be reading through books and kind of understanding what's going on in the industry that day. I get a lot of newsletters. And then, I go into school and it's more the academic side of things. But I will say a lot of my courses, it's a lot of practical application as well. So that's a nice kind of blend in my program specifically. And then I'm also trying to make sure that I'm actually like practicing and applying what I'm reading about into the work that I'm doing whenever I'm doing it. So I am a big fan of making myself templates, whether it's through Notion, which is my one true love, or whether it's through Figma. Like I'm either taking people's templates off the community or I'm making my own because it wasn't the one that I wanted. And that also helps me to get over that like designer's block when you're trying to do something, but it's mostly useful for helping to synthesize and apply that information that I'm getting.
Is there like a platform that you would recommend for that side learning?
I am going to post my Notion page that has a bunch of resources in there for everybody, if you want to check it out. And for like learning stuff, honestly, YouTube is my best friend. There's some YouTube channels that I've linked in there that are great. Like Femke's has so much information about like in-depth stuff like the interview process or the QA process or, doing a design retro and stuff like that. And you can learn so much from folks who've been working in the industry longer than I have, because I'm at my 8-month experience mark, so I'm still a newbie.
Thank you.
No problem.
Hi, I had a question. So you're no, she's still there. Okay, so you're a freelancer, right?
Yeah, I do freelance as well. Yeah.
So how do you know how do you know you're not getting like if you're searching for a company and so like how do you know they're not underpaying you or like undervaluing your work?
So there's a great website called ilovecreatives.com. They have a whole spreadsheet that you can download. I just posted it in the chat too, that helps you price out what your rates should be. And that way, whether you're charging a flat rate or whether you're charging an hourly rate, you at least know that you're making something that is in the ballpark of what you want. And don't be afraid to like charge more than don't be afraid to charge a number that might sound a bit scary for you to say, because at the end of the day, someone's coming to you because you have a certain skill set and they either don't have the time to do it or don't want to learn how to do it. So you're providing a valuable skill. But make sure you're pricing yourself correctly because it helps the whole industry as well to, be a fair place for everybody to be able to make a living doing what we love to do.
Thank you.
And how can you actually negotiate your salary if you feel like they underpay you?
So definitely come at it from a perspective of wanting to understand why they're paying you that rate. And then it's always good to keep a list of like what you've brought to the company as well, like what metrics you've improved or, what work you've done that has been beneficial to different people, whether it's UX work, whether it's, some other skill that you're bringing value towards the company in. And yeah, just highlight why you're valuable and why you deserve that rate and bring in average rates for the city you live in as well. This is the average salary in Toronto. So I want to be there. I don't want to be below that.
Thank you.
And it's scary, I know. But like we have to advocate for ourselves or else we won't get paid fairly. And it's important in this industry that we all get paid fairly.
True.
We're going to be closing the breakout rooms in like, I don't know, less than 30 seconds. So, okay, I'm closing them now. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah, of course. Have a good one, everyone.
Okay, so we'll just give it a couple of seconds for the other breakout rooms to kind of just like pop back in. Okay, there they are. Okay, is everyone back?
I think everyone's back, Aline.
Okay, so thank you everyone for joining us today. I just want to say thank you all for the questions that you've brought, and also obviously to our professionals for coming to answer all these questions for us. So I know we have like 9-ish minutes left, so I'm just gonna give you guys like 5 more minutes maybe, just to kind of like ask any last questions about like maybe the recording, or even just some notes based on the links that the industry professionals have sent on the chat. So yeah, any last questions, thoughts, Q&A?
Please add all of your accounts in the chat. God knows we want to follow you guys. So Abhinav's been going ham at this all night. So, you know, anything that's left, go for it.
Yes.
I had a question about the. Oh, sorry. Go for it. Okay. I had a question about the recording. You said it's being recorded. Where will this be uploaded?
So I believe we might be uploading this on our YouTube account. Chris, can you elaborate?
There are a couple of ICCIT Council YouTubes, but ours would be the logo with the 2021. It'll be uploaded most likely by tonight, if not the weekend.
All right, perfect. Great. And I will also be creating a doc with all the links that, you know, obviously was sent in the chat, and also with the contacts of all 3 of our industry professionals. And yeah, thank you everyone for coming. It was so nice meeting you all. And thank you again to our industry professionals. So yeah, have a great weekend, everyone. Oh, sorry, just before everyone leaves, can we take a picture maybe for marketing, just with everyone, or at least a lot of people with their cameras on? Yeah. Cool. Sorry, give me 1 second.
I'll give everyone like maybe 10 more seconds.
Okay, yeah.
Just fix your hair, you know, make sure your hair looks nice.
Put a filter on, anything.
Say 3, 2, 1, like when we know we're supposed to pose, just to get the heads up.
Can we make a face? I'm gonna take one pic. I'm gonna take the boomerang first. So we'll start with the boomerang. Y'all can like wave or do whatever you like. Okay, I'm gonna count down. 3, 2, 1. Okay, and one more.
Boomerang or picture?
Just a picture now. 3, 2, 1. Thank you, everyone.
Yay, thank you everyone for coming out. It was so nice seeing everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. See you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend.
So much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. Take care, everyone.
Oh my God, stop.
Couple of
Wait, hold up.
left?
See if we
Yeah.
can... Wait, 1 sec.
We have a couple of students left.
Yeah.
Yes.
Hold on.
Yes, I'm just gonna remove them.
Yeah.
Put a nonstop wave. Just smile and wave, you know.
Yes.
Smile and wave, guys. Smile and
Queen, beauty queens.
We're good. We're good.
Great job. Great job.
Well
done. Well done.
Good job, guys. Amazing event. Honestly, it was so great. I could like speak more, but there was fire alarm.
Wait.
by my building.
Wait.